Starting recording, and we are recording. Jared Hess, welcome to UVU. Thank you so much for taking the time. Just watched Don Verdean, and we're going to do a little live Q&A. I'm going to ask a few questions, and they're going to come up, and they're going to ask you questions. They're going to tell. We're just going to do it right here, kind of face to face. Right. You're also on the big screen right there, so they know, so they're watching you that way. So that's how that works.
That's friggin' ugly as sin.
Yes, well, we do what we can. So Jared, I love this movie, and I watched it. I don't know, it came out about 4 years ago, right? Something like that.
Yeah, yep.
And I don't know how much. See, I've always thought about this because we've been working on a project, and right. I've always wondered about your fascination with like hoaxes and stuff like this. And I don't know how much you're able to talk about Salamander right now. Are you able to
totally.
Can you tell us a little bit about sort of where this came from, and maybe introduce the students to what you're working on now, and how? I mean, I feel like they're related, and I feel like
totally.
Yeah.
So it's funny. This kind of came about. It was a collision of two completely unrelated ideas for me. A good friend of mine named Jason Hatfield that I went to film school with at BYU. He years ago he sent me these funny videos of these biblical archaeologists that were going around claiming that they'd found the Holy Grail, and they were going around and putting on sermons like at small churches. And there's a couple of dudes, and one guy was like, "We found the blood of Christ in a catacomb below Israel." I mean, it was like crazy, wild, funny stuff, but it was really fringe Christian biblical archaeology, and I was like, man, these guys are such characters. It's a world I didn't know, but the world that I did know is the world of Mark Hoffman, who, in the 1980s in Utah started to forge fake religious documents that kind of rewrote American history and LDS religious history. And again, he definitely was a guy that had a vendetta against the church and a bone to pick against Mormonism as a whole. He was not a believer. And so he definitely had an agenda with everything that he was creating and producing. But to me, the idea seemed interesting that, you've got these biblical archaeologists that are out there trying to find stuff to validate the miracles of the Bible. That are trying to do something to bolster whatever their belief system is. And to me, it's a world that was kind of ripe for comedy, but what kind of like moral quandary does a guy get in that's doing that? What kind of lies does he do to bolster his own belief and keep a job and keep, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where the world of Don Verdean came in. And so, yeah, I mean, I've studied and read about Mark Hoffman for years. That whole saga is super fascinating. And so that definitely informed Don Verdean, and the idea of like planting your discoveries was something very funny to me as well. But I think, yeah, so that's where it all came about.
Excellent. And can you just, because people are, I'm sure, curious, can you talk a little bit about Salamander, or is that
Yeah. So in the middle of a documentary series, working with the BBC on, it'll be like a 3-part series on the Mark Hoffman story. So yeah.
Excellent. Can't wait. And I noticed, so also this is, now you filmed in Utah, you started filming locally, I guess up in Idaho, but then this is a Utah project. You also did, Gentlemen
Broncos here.
Yeah, Broncos in Utah. There's a lot of really fun. Halfway when I first saw this, I have to admit, as silly as it sounds, but you've tricked me, because I was like, no way, I can't believe they have the budget to go to Israel. I actually said that in my mind, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute, it's a movie. And and watching it again, boy, I was, there's like the Provo amphitheater there at the castle,
Totally.
and of course the Masonic where we were recently.
Oh, yeah.
And so So tell me about filming in Utah, and you're a guy who has had an opportunity to stay in Utah and build a career, and I know a lot of our students, dream of that
Right,
because,
right, right.
so talk a little
So
bit
yeah,
about.
I mean, when just writing it, knowing that it was going to be an independent film with a lower budget, I wrote it specifically with, being very budget conscious and what can we take advantage of and shoot all here, and then just have a second unit go out to Israel and get some stuff. And that's what we did. So, I knew that there were a ton of different locations in Utah, especially in southern Utah, in St. George, that could double for Israel. I mean, I did like a big deep dive, checking out books and doing Google image searches just of the biblical locations in Israel and going, wow, we've got stuff that matches that pretty close in Utah that I've seen before. There was some stuff, I mean, you think of southern Utah like St. George, and you think of red rock and red sand, which is really what it's known for. But there are pockets that are like white sand that has like, I mean, vegetation and just the whole scenery totally could double for parts of Israel. And so we went, found those spots. Some of them are really close to like new developments. But the one that we found where they're, trying to dig for the Goliath skull, that's just a little suburb of St. George. So sometimes we'd have to wait for dudes that were out ripping around on their crotch rockets, their but yeah, Jerush and I wrote it with being very conscious of that and going, okay, we can, and we ended up sending our cinematographer, who was this Danish dude, and it was literally him in the camera, and we just had like a local Israeli fixer guy that like took him around and got everything that we needed, and it ended up blending in pretty seamlessly, I think, with what we did, at least to kind of give it a little authentic texture and context of where you are in the world.
Excellent. Tell me about we had Jerusha here a couple years ago, but and so she talked about it, but probably was anyone here when Jerusha was here? I see two hands. Yeah. So seniors, they're seniors about to graduate. So tell us a little bit about your guys's. I'm always curious for writing partners and how they work together, and you're kind of another layer in that is that you actually have to spend more time with each other than most writing partners.
Totally.
So talk about that dynamic.
Yeah, we've got it worked out pretty well. I mean, we've got kids, we have a family. And so when our kids go to school from like 9 o'clock to 2:30 before they get home, that's our window to write. And so we when we're writing a screenplay, we will, there's definitely the incubation period. Usually, like if you're doing, a studio film, you kind of have already thought about the rough outline because you're either pitching it to them or they make you do that before you go off to script anyway. And so usually we incubate, we bounce ideas off each other, figure out kind of the structure that's, writing on our dry erase board or throwing note cards up. And we try to work out a lot of the big bugs earlier on. I mean, it's funny, I've done, we've written both ways. There's the, the author of, oh geez, the guy that writes those depressing books, the guy that wrote like No Country for Old Men. What's that author's name again? Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, exactly. It's like that dude's philosophy. He's like, I write, I have no idea where it's going. I let each page surprise me and see where the world and characters take me. And that's one way to do it. And I mean, look, he does such incredible work. I mean, there's no discussion about it. The Coen brothers like to write that way. They just jump into it and go, and they're geniuses. But then other people want to have like a map and architecture of what they're doing before they like get to work. You know what I mean? And I think it's more effective to do it that way. Sometimes you don't end up with something that maybe is as satisfying if you don't plan for that. But we do that, and we're pretty thorough. We like kind of our first draft. Some people like to just bang out something so they have something in a couple of days, in a week or 2 weeks, and we're very detail oriented and need to be able to hear the characters, know how they sound, what they look like, just their whole thing. But the characters are very, very important to us, obviously, when we're writing. And so until we've kind of cracked that, it's, and sometimes you'll have the idea first where you've got the story and the plot, and then you're like, oh, who are the people that live in this world? Or vice versa. It's like, I know the character first. I want to do a movie about the character, and then you kind of got to figure out what his story is, what his dilemma. So we've done it both ways. But I think as we, in the last, 2.5 years, we've written 6 studio animated movies, and we've gotten, just that grind, and also done quite a bit of television. I've worked on. Helped my friend Danny McBride on the first season of Righteous Gemstones, and that's a totally different beast, but it's super fun. You're writing for a shorter, like a half-hour structure, but you've got a bigger 8 to 9 episode season arc, which is fun. But yeah, just the more you do it, you start to kind of realize what to look out for, the problems you're going to have. And that just only comes with experience, the more that you do it.
And do you write individual scenes, or do you sit down next to each other, or do you pass it back and forth, or how do you do it?
Yeah, we map it out together. So we'll outline the thing pretty thoroughly, and then we'll break it up into scenes, and then we sit down together in the morning. And our goal minimum is to get 2 pages done a day, and 2 pages, that are good, that we're proud of. And then, when you do the math, it's like, okay, in about 2 months, you should have a completed script, more or less. But most days you'll end up getting 3, 4, 5, on a good day, 8 pages if you're on a roll and really feeling inspired. But our goal is minimum 2 pages a day when we're doing a script. In 2 months, we've got something good. And then we've got, a week or 2 to kind of go through it and cull it down. And but we write it together. We'll hook our laptop up to a big screen, or not a big screen, but just a TV, so we can both see what we're writing. We don't have to be huddled around sharing the coronavirus around our laptop.
Okay, guys, come on up. If you have questions, go up and line up here, please. Don't have any lulls. We cannot have lulls. Don, come on up. You're ready to go. I'm done. Jared, I'm going to turn it over to these guys.
Great.
And once you start to get tired or something, let us know.
No, let's go long, man. I love it. Let's do it.
All right. Okay. They're going to say their names and introduce themselves. Thanks again, Jared.
You bet.
Hello.
Man. Nice beard.
Hey, thanks. You too. And thanks for being here. My name is Don Barfus. I'm going into directing here, writing as well, kind of as much as I can cram in. So yeah, before I get to my question, and before I forget, I wanted to say thank you for Gentlemen Broncos. That movie just I don't know, it just speaks to me. I love it.
Great, I love it.
But that's that's the one that I cheer for. So anyway, I kind of wanted to hear from you a little about maybe tackling kind of shooting efficiently, shooting on a budget on a short time scale, but still maintaining your vision and your style, because I think you have a great style and everything.
Yeah. On this one, it's funny, the budget for this film was really tight. And a lot of the actors are friends of mine, and so they were working for scale and just loved the script and wanted to come party in Utah. Yeah. But our shooting schedule, it was a 25-day shoot, which is really fast. We shot Napoleon Dynamite in 22 days, 23 days. We were shooting, that one was weird. We shot Monday through Saturday. So we shot Napoleon in 3 weeks. It was super fast. And then we had a couple of days, the following week, 3 more shooting days. So it was super, super quick. This one was 25, so only 2 more than that. This script was, longer, and it was more ambitious in what we had to do. There were more extras, more, just kind of things happening, but still manageable. And I think the biggest things you can do, two things. One, you've got to have, like, we couldn't have done this film if it was an improvised movie. And you know, there's a lot of very amazing, funny, talented comedic actors that can totally hang doing improv. That's never been my thing. Like, I'm not an improv guy. I like to be as completely planned as possible going into a shoot. And for me, that's going to each of my locations as many times as I can by myself with my locations person and really know what the heck I'm doing. If I have to show up and start making decisions on the day, you're screwed. So you want to get there and know it for yourself. And sometimes, you know, if you've written something independent, you should be able to do that because you've got a location in mind. And usually it should be something that resources that you have access to, but go there, walk it out and be like, okay, these are my shots. This is what I'm doing. Take your friggin' phone and line up shots, take up your camera and fool around. And it's like, okay, this is exactly what I'm getting. I know what I'm doing. On most movies, that's a luxury because you usually, even with studio films, don't know if it's really happening until right before, and there's not a lot of like prep time.
Yeah.
But take the time to know your shots, make a shot list. And then it's like you just empowered yourself to give more time with your actors to get the performance you need. Like, that's the most important thing that you're going to be doing. After you've written the script, the most important thing you'll do as a director is cast. Like, who's going to bring that to life? That's the most important decision that you'll make, hands down. And then after that, it's like department head, cinematographer, composer, editor, all those things. But your cast, and then you don't want to screw that up by being like, I don't know, I think you should wear this color shirt and that color shirt. It's like, dude, Hitchcock said, I do all my improvising in the office. And that just means he planned the heck out of it. Coen brothers, same way, man. Those guys show up, they shoot so quickly and efficient. They storyboard everything. There's nothing that they haven't thought about going into it. And then it just liberates them. They have time to improvise if they want to, and they have time, you have time to depart from your plan if you're planned. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's the only way that you can do it. Only way you can do it. And got to have a game plan. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. You more than answered my question. I had a feeling that you'd be able to because it shows in your work. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to
Thank you.
the next guy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Kyle. How are you doing?
What's up, Kyle?
Not much. I mean, so sorry, it's just in front of a lot of people. So
No, you're good. Good.
So I actually have two questions. So the first one is like, what would you say inspired you to make the casting choices you did, like with Sam Rockwell and with some of the other stars in the cast? So
Yeah. So I'd worked with Sam before, and he was a friend. And you know, most of the people were friends of mine. The one actress that I didn't know that whose work I've always admired is Amy Ryan. Just a big fan of everything that she's done. She's so talented, so funny. I'd worked and met with Will Forte. I was friends with Danny McBride, and I've known Jermaine Clement for years. So initially, when I started writing it, I called Sam, and I actually sent him some funny videos of these biblical archaeologist dudes, and he was like, "I'm in, man, I'm in." And then I told Jermaine about it, and he was like, "Yeah, yes, I'm in." So yeah, it was a familiarity, and you know, when you've worked with certain people, you develop kind of a shorthand where you have a similar sensibility and understand and love each other's work. And I felt like I had that with this group of people that I've known for a while. And it's like we'll help each other out on whatever, you know what I mean? Even if there's not money involved, which there was not on this film. But they were like, man, we want to do cool, fun, out there, creative stuff. But Sam Rockwell was my number one from the beginning. I've just heard him do that kind of Southern character pretty authentically, even though we made him look like Chuck Norris. Yeah, it was pretty fun. But I love all these people's work, and I feel lucky that I'm, have a friendship with them. So.
And so my other question is like, who would you say would be your number one like go-to role models when it comes to filmmaking, as in like, I want to be like this filmmaker, or this guy's film actually inspires me?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, being I guess mostly a comedy director, I really love the work of people that don't do comedies. But I love Martin Scorsese stuff. I mean, I feel like Goodfellas, just watching that. I mean, if it's on TV, that's one that I never turn off. I mean, he's just so inspiring, his execution, and he can just, yeah, I mean, I love his work. The Coen brothers I love. Gosh, who else? Those are the go-to kind of inspirational dudes for me, I think. I mean, there's a ton more. There's so many other films and work out there that I love, but those guys are great.
You also mentioned Hitchcock earlier. Would you say that he's one of them as well?
Yes, I like Hitchcock's work. Sometimes it's a little, I don't know, I find when things get too exact, sometimes the life can get pulled out of it, and his stuff is brilliant. The suspense and just how he structures his films is amazing. But he often I think he called actors cattle at one point. That's how we saw him. I mean, he just saw them as models in his films, and that's why I love Psycho. Psycho's easily my favorite of everything that he did. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Great question, my man. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, Jared.
How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. I'm well. No signs of flu or heavy cough.
Wait.
So, my name's Alex. I'm a writer from Orem.
Awesome.
And I've got a question about Napoleon Dynamite. Do you get many of those?
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay. So I'm always blown away by the return on investment with that movie.
Right.
And obviously, you did have a small budget for it, and that had to have come from somewhere.
Right.
How did you turn a short film into this, huge cult following? How did you get the budget for that in Utah, Idaho?
Sure. So I went to one of my good buddies in film school was this guy named Jeremy Kuhn, and Jeremy, he's the one that produced it. He'd worked on some of my short films. I'd worked on some of his when we were in film school, and then I did the short film Hey Luca. And I'd read, it's like, I mean, our industry is weird in that, sadly, like a film degree doesn't mean much. And I know that I'm saying this at a university here, but a film degree doesn't, if you want to be a director, like I can't just go and show my degree and go, hey, hire me for your next big $100 million movie. You have to have a body of work that speaks for itself and showcases your talent. And even back in 2003, all the film festival books, that's what it said. It was like, you got to get into a film festival and showcase who you are as a director and what it is that you do. And for me, the most amazing thing about film school is to, again, have great teachers like Dwayne that expose you to new ideas, new work, filmmaking techniques, that I was not aware of, and that you're around other people that you're going to need to help make your stuff. So everybody that worked on Napoleon were all friends from film school, the whole crew. We were all film students. And I never would have been able to make the film had I not gone to film school and created and found that community of friends and people that I continue to work with to this day. But to answer your question, Jeremy Kuhn, his brother, started the company 1-800-Contacts. So he was pretty loaded, and he gave us a check for $200,000 to go start shooting Napoleon. We wanted to shoot on 35 millimeter. And we got a student deal from Kodak. And then we talked to Panavision, and they let us use some of their old camera bodies and lenses. and we all got student rates for it. That was the only way that we could do it. And then we went and shot the film on, on 35, and we needed another 200,000, I think, to finish the post-production, to license some music, and then, do all the post-sound work and everything. So all in, it was around 400,000, 450,000 to complete the film. And then, and I didn't think at all, like, we were in the middle of cutting it. It was super rough. We didn't have even a composer hired yet. And Jeremy was like, oh, let's go ahead and submit it to Sundance right now. Let's just throw our hat in the ring. And I'm like, dude, this is a work in progress. We need to wait. Let's wait till next year and put our best foot forward. Because we shot the film in July in Idaho. And then we started editing in August. And some of the Sundance deadlines, the early deadlines, like in September, and then October, you got to be done. And we were nowhere near being done. But Jeremy sent this like kind of bloated rough cut. And I was kind of pissed at him. I was like, dude, we should have just waited to be done with it and have it. And anyway, lo and behold, we get a call right before Thanksgiving saying, hey, you're in Sundance and you're in the dramatic competition. And it was like, what? I mean, it was the most amazing phone call ever. Just knowing the odds of how hard it is to get into the festival, and let alone to get into the dramatic competition. And so then we raced to finish the film like right after Thanksgiving through December. We'd never screened the film for anybody, so we had no idea like how it was going to go over. And I was like, okay, either people are going to get the tone of this movie and the character, or they're not, and my career's over. And luckily for us, it got like a standing ovation, and kind of became one of the bigger films at the festival that year, and got sold like the next day. And it was all a magical, Sundance happy story. But yeah, and then it just took on a life of its own. So, and that's not anything that we were trying to do. Again, we were just film students trying, I was just trying to make something that was me, something that I knew, something that that I wanted to see myself. And, I think when people go in planning, I'm going to make an Oscar-winning film, usually that doesn't happen for them. You know what I mean? It's usually they're just trying to make a good film and not screw it up. And luckily, it turns out great and ends up getting a life of its own. So that's the thing. I think too, like, I remember in film school there were people in my screenwriting classes, and they were like, I'm writing this movie about clipper ships in 1620, and I need 100 mil and Bruce Willis to make it. And then it just sits there like they wrote something that was outside of their means, right? And now it's like, dude, you guys could make a kick-A movie on a phone if you with the right concept and make it incredible. But some people write way outside of like what their resources are, their ability to make something good. And I think if you make something intimate and personal, and look at, like, think about the stories that you tell your friends just on a day-to-day basis that are interesting, that you like, that they, it's like maybe kind of start there for ideas. Anyway, I'm rambling. I went past your question about budget. So sorry about that.
No, thank you so much for that answer.
You bet.
Hey, Jared, I'm Damien Parente. How are you?
Good, man. Good.
Fantastic. I'll make it quick. I've noticed that you're the only director on most of your films, and that you limit it to about 2 or 3 writers. And I've always been curious how throughout pre-production and production and post-production, the concurrency of having a limited number of people working on a film at once, whether it be writing or directing. Do you find that, I guess I just want to kind of get a feel, is it problematic having too many chefs in the kitchen, having
Always.
less people working on the creative side?
Yeah. I mean, it's different. I think with most, you can't really control like how many credits get on a script, right? I mean, it's like oftentimes, I mean, It's funny, one of my friends is an executive at like Legendary Pictures, and they just did that Godzilla. They do like big monster movies. Like they did all the Godzilla stuff, and then they did Detective Pikachu. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, we had 14 writers come work on that. And only not too many of them get credited for it, but they'll do things like, and here's the thing, and look, the studio system's totally different because somebody will have a property or an idea or a franchise that they want to expand into a movie, and generally they don't know how to crack it. And so the first couple of drafts are like mega turds, but all those people that have worked on it, even if it's a page one, they're still going to get a writing credit. And so through the development process, sometimes you could have anywhere from 2 to 10 to 15 people that have come worked on something. How many of those people actually get the final credit on stuff is always up. They have to go through this whole weird arbitration process with the WGA where they literally go through and go, I wrote that, I wrote the first act, it's, intact. But so you don't really have, if you're directing something, you don't have control over the different versions that existed before you came along. But I think generally, but sometimes it's weird for a comedy. Like last year I was developing a project, and we'd had the script, and we brought in, you do what's called like a writer's room punch up, where for a day or two or a couple days a week, you'll assemble like 8 to 10 writers that you love, and everybody's just pitching jokes on it. And you've got some dude in the corner that's just writing everything, and after doing that for 12 hours, your face hurts and you come out of it. And then, you go through and pick the best stuff and plug it into the script. And most comedy movies, studio ones will go through a process like that. But generally, like an independent film or something that's good, like the good ones where there's one credit or two, generally have been somebody that wrote something on spec and it's good already and ready to be made into a movie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but it doesn't. Yeah, getting too many cooks in the kitchen, you always lose the voice and the vision of it. And so sometimes studios will go, hey, we're not going to do any more drafts of the script until we have a director on board that has a vision that can kind of steer where this is going. And that happens all the time.
Okay. Well, it seems like it seems like you've happened upon having, I guess, few creative designers on your projects, and it shows. Like it's fantastic. The vision is there. It's competent. It's super focused. I really look up to you. Thank you for your work, and appreciate the answer.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Saul. And my question is going to be specifically about what I consider my favorite film by you, Nacho Libre. And this is coming from a young Mexican American, having grown up seeing this film. It meant a lot to me and my family, and we all loved it. So
that's awesome.
My question is this: what inspired you to make the film, and what was the most difficult part about filming Nacho Libre?
Yeah, so it's funny. After we did Napoleon, we took a lot of, we had quite a few offers come our way, but nothing that really resonated with us. And then Paramount and Nickelodeon Movies sent us like, hey, here are some ideas that we're developing. And Paramount and Nickelodeon had bought the rights to the true story. There was a magazine article about this luchador in Mexico named Fry Tormenta or Friar Storm. And his story was like, he legit was wrestling incognito, moonlighting as a masked luchador to raise money for this orphanage in Mexico. We were like, holy crap, this sounds awesome. So we actually flew down to Mexico, met with him. He was really serious and kind of boring, sadly. We were like, maybe we can do, I mean, this concept is great, but we can't do like a straight biopic on this guy. Right. We gotta find some special sauce. And we had already been talking to Jack Black about it. And so we're like, Jack, we want to do this, but we want to keep you like this weird gringo dude that was raised in Mexico in an orphanage that came, you know what I mean? And anyway, but it was literally one of the funnest times I've ever had making a movie. It was magical. We were shooting in Oaxaca, Mexico, which has this cool colonial, huge indigenous population. And it was just kind of just a beautiful place to be in film. And I remember after our last day of shooting, literally it was like the final wrestling scene. So we shot the whole movie in Oaxaca, and then we came to Mexico City to film the final battle with Ramses. And I remember Jack went to his trailer and just wept when we called cut. Like the whole crowd, like after the final fight, literally all the fans like gave him a standing ovation for like 15 minutes, and he just broke down. He was like, "This is the greatest movie I've ever worked on. Oh my god!" It was pretty fun. But we all had such an amazing time, and it was one of the best crews. If you ever have the chance to shoot in Mexico, they're like world-class film crew, just amazing, and everybody bends over backwards to like just do a kick-ass job for your movie. But I think the hardest thing on that one, weirdly, man, I'm trying to think. It was actually the music. And this is weird. Here's a little fun story. So Beck, the musician Beck, who I'm friends with and Jack was friends with, he was originally doing the music. He's like, dude, I love this, want to do it. He made a ton of tracks that were just amazing. But one of our executives, her husband was a composer, and she's like, I don't know, he's a rock star. I don't know if he can do movie score. And so the studio ended up still paying him and owning the music he did, but firing Beck from the film. And I was devastated. I was like, what are you doing? And then I was like, who are we going to hire now? And lo and behold, Danny Elfman happened to be available, who's one of the greatest composers of all time. He came on and he's like, oh yeah, I really like this. This is really fun, Jared. This is great. And so he came on and scored the whole movie. And then the studio's like, oh yeah, we like his stuff and Beck's stuff. And so we ended up using both, which is super weird, but me as a young director put me in an awkward spot because I was friends with Beck, and it was like having, some weird mom say you can't play together. But then I ended up liking my new friend too. So it was like a weird, it was just out of my hands. So, but it ended up working out great, and it's got such a special soundtrack, and yeah, they're both amazing guys. But that, for me, that was the hardest part, was the post-production music drama.
Oh, wow. Thank you. And I think I'll just have one more question. As for Don Verdean, what was the hardest part about shooting this movie?
Gosh, I think it was just our shooting schedule. We didn't have, we had to do, we didn't have enough money to go over. And so probably my hardest day of shooting on that film, we were just out in the desert and running out of light. And we, had the sun was going down, like a storm was coming. And I was like, just trying to get everybody to move as fast as they could. And that was the hardest part, I think, was just, maybe we were a little too ambitious for the shooting schedule that we had. But in the end of the day, I think it all worked out fine. But it was stressful for me. I had some lonely moments. You're trying to make the best thing that you can, and everything's working against you. Time is working against you. But it was fun. It was the fastest post-production I've ever had, which was awesome. And I used an editor named Tanner Christensen here in Utah, one of my favorite editors of all time. Like, I would say he's better than some of the elder statesmen, big Hollywood editors. He's so fast and so good. And we were done with my edit of that film in like 3 weeks.
Nice.
Which was cool. So, yeah.
All right, thanks. Well, I do hope I get to see Jack Black in another one of your movies. Thank you.
Awesome. He wants to do Nacho 2 really bad.
Oh, yeah, I heard that. I'm hoping, man. Good luck. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Hi, I'm Normandy.
Hi. It's nice to see someone that's not a man with facial hair.
Yeah, that is a weird thing that we have a lot of here. By the way, I didn't know that you were buddies with Jason Hatfield. I love that guy.
Oh my gosh, he's so great.
He's so awesome. I work with him at the LDS Motion Picture Studio.
Oh
And
my
he's just
God.
always coming and he's just, like, yeah, anyways, everything he
So
says that comes out of his
he's
mouth.
the funniest guy on the planet.
Yeah. But one question that I had about writing comedy is I know with like comedy there's always a certain like sense of kind of like larger than life stuff, and I wondered if there's like, do you have like a personal like wackiness threshold of like things that like take it too far, or how you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a great question. And you just kind of have to feel that, you know what I mean? It's like if you managing tone, like whatever you establish the tone of your film to be, and I'll use the Coen brothers as an example, right? It's like, have you guys seen Raising Arizona? That thing is like a live action cartoon. And that type of comedy is so funny, and it's like big and bold, and even their camera angles and choices, and Nicolas Cage plays everything really big. But then you look at a movie like Fargo, the tone is completely different. It's more like a dark comedy. And jokes that you would do in Raising Arizona wouldn't fit in the world of Fargo necessarily, right? But they're both comedies. It's just the tone is totally different. So I think once you establish the tone of what it is you're trying to do and the type of comedy that you're going for, and even for me, like I would say Nacho Libre is a big live action cartoon, and Don Verdean's not. It's it's got some pretty goofy ideas in it, but the tone, it's not like Jack Black like farting and jumping into an ocean, you know what I mean? And eating. It's not that. It's more like people talking serious about the Lord. You know what I mean? And how ridiculous those conversations can get. So yeah, so it's first, I think you have to figure out what the tone of comedy that you're going for. And then once you've kind of established that, it's like, yeah, it's okay to cross the line a couple of times. You have to feel it out. It's not really something that it's like, here's the formula for it. It's like you just have to kind of follow your gut. And sometimes, when you're shooting, like in Don Verdean, I told Will Forte, I'm like, dude, you're trying to find Satanism in unlikely places like breakfast cereal. And we had all these funny outtakes of him, but he does that one line. He's like, banana nut crunch, we know what that is. And he was just totally like riffing on that line. And some stuff that he did like crossed the line, and I had to cut it out. But everyone was dying. We were just like, holy crap. So that was like the tame stuff, and he obviously can do the MacGruber like rated R stuff. But you just have to know it's fun, but it's a moment of discovery when you're shooting too. You have something that you've written, and you've hired these actors to bring it to life. And there was that moment, probably the most improvised moment in the whole film, where Danny McBride is talking to like some church elders after a press conference, and I can't even. You guys, I haven't seen the film in a couple of years, so I can't even remember. But it's something where he's riffing on, was it Noah's like boat that was like a vacation vessel or something? And he's like, they crash it, and then he starts talking about like how dinosaur bones are just like a Voltron of like lizards or something, right? Isn't that what he said?
Something like that.
He just was like riffing. I was like, Danny, I just got to get a cutaway of you like talking, just like a quick kind of like background B-roll shot. And I'm like, but dude, just riff on the idea that you want to go after Noah's Ark next. And he's like, all right, yeah, I can do that. And then he just does his Danny thing. And I was like, holy crap. And then I ended up spending like 15 minutes just getting nonsense.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Follow-up question to that. I know some people say like, oh, comedy has no rules or whatever, but I know there's at least like do's and don'ts of comedy, kind of. Do you have any of those that you kind of maybe not even consciously?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. Like you look at, I don't know. I think to me the biggest don't of comedy, and look, like I love watching Dave Chappelle do his stand up and do like a Netflix special where he offends everybody and nobody. And I love more than anything the South Park guys. I think they're brilliant. I love what they do. Nobody is off limits to them, but they're brilliant. Like they're shining a light on hypocrisy and BS in the world, right? And so that's what they do, and they do it better than anybody. It's like they and so their form of satire is just genius. It's like keep doing it, please, because we need to be held accountable for our bad ideas, and they shine a light on so many bad ideas. You know, but for me, I think the biggest rule is to not be mean-spirited. I think things that you can get ugly. I mean, if you turn your jokes into kind of like a bully platform, I think it's bad. That's for me. That doesn't exist for other people. And some people might look at what South Park does or Dave Chappelle does or other people do and say, oh, they're bullying marginalized people or bullying whatever. You know, I don't see it as that because I think that there's like some smartness to what they're doing, but I think that there are dumb, low-level writers that just, I don't know, go for low-hanging too much, and I don't know. There's no rules. You just do what you want. But for me personally, it's like, and I've been accused of being mean-spirited, by the way. Like even with my first film, Napoleon, people are like, "Oh, is he making fun of this guy?" And the whole idea of like, are we laughing at them or with them? It's like, dude, when have you ever been laughing with anything in a comedy? Think about it.
Yeah.
Like, are you really laughing with like Adam Sandler as he gets punched in the nuts? No. You're laughing at that. So there's no such thing as, in my opinion, as laughing with stuff. But I think that you can laugh at the absurdity and the ridiculousness of people's bad decisions, and that's what comedy is.
Yeah, totally. I love
Make
that.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You bet.
Hello, my name's
Hey.
Jared.
Yeah.
So my question is, in all your movies, you kind of have like these, I guess, quirky characters, and I was wondering, like, where they come from. Like, what's your process of writing these characters?
Yeah. I mean, for me, Napoleon, I mean, was very autobiographical. My wife and I wrote it together. I have 5 younger brothers, and most of what ended up in Napoleon literally are like direct transcripts of stupid conversations that they had. You know, like one time my brother called me, he's like, "Jared, is mom there? Can you bring me my chapstick?" I mean, it's like, that's like a whole scene in the film. After my mom saw the movie, she's like, "Well, that was a lot of embarrassing family material." So I mean, again, that was like writing what I knew, you know what I mean? And that was a very personal film. And as it was for my wife, Jerusha, who, you know, we wrote it together, like she was Deb, 100%. For us, yeah, it's like writing characters that just interest you, and they'll, if you're open to like the universe kind of presenting ideas to you and you write them down, and now I just, like, anytime a bit of dialogue and an idea comes, I put it down on my phone or email myself, and they just come from the most unlikely places. But for me, like, I want to be able to hear how a person talks, know how they dress. We write a lot of clothing descriptions into our films, or into the scripts. I remember Jermaine Clement, first time we worked together, he's like, "Well, you guys really like describing your outfits for these guys." So yeah, I mean, it's sometimes you write something with an actor in mind, and then sometimes you don't. You just write the character and go, let's figure out who this person is. But most of the time, we've kind of tried to write with people in mind, and it makes it easier.
Okay, cool. One more thing. So my family's a big fan of Napoleon Dynamite,
Mhm.
and I showed him the original short film you did at BYU,
Oh yeah.
and there's a line Napoleon says where he says he's going to Malad for like an FFA thing.
Yeah.
So my dad wanted me to tell you it's pronounced Malad.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I know it's pronounced Malad. John Heater kept saying Malad, and I was thinking, no, I'm like, guess I have to live with that turd.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, they had to lower it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, my name's Bronwyn.
Hi, Bronwyn.
Hi, I'm two questions. Number one. So I'm friends with Scott Christopherson, who directed.
Awesome.
He's awesome. He used to babysit me. Anyways, so he directed the Insufferable Grill, which you helped produce, and I wondered what the biggest challenge in producing that movie was for documentary.
You know, I think Scott had already done so much work on that. He directed the film and was a producer on it. I think the toughest thing on that, again, that one was interesting. And do people know who Steve Grew is in the audience?
Do you guys know who he is? He's a filmmaker from Utah. He makes.
So Steve Grew. I went to film school with Steve Grew at BYU in the early 2000s. He was like a year or two ahead of me, but he was like, I mean, the quickest shorthand is like he was like the Ed Wood of Utah. Like he was super prolific. And when everyone was trying to shoot on film, he was like, this is bull crap. The world's going digital. And he would shoot on like mini DV. And at BYU, there would be these, he would go to Kinko's and make these like casting calls where he was making like a Lord of the Rings movie, but it was called Circle of Fire, the Dark Lord. And it was him wearing like a cloak. And it was like, I need 10 hordsmen, 20 orcs, and like 5 beautiful maidens. A small fee may be required for some roles. I mean, but he was making movies every weekend, and they were really ambitious, and he would shoot them, and they were unintentionally funny. So like some of the lines were, I mean, he was making serious sci-fi fantasy films. Anyway, I've known him for years. He's made over 200 movies. His company's called Utah Wolf Productions, and everyone that I know that grew up with him was like, man, we should do a documentary on Steve. Scott Christopherson started it a couple years ago, and he had made this movie about the last elf on Earth, and the FBI is trying to commit elf genocide and like take him down. And he becomes a rogue like Rambo elf. And Steve, he played the character himself in the original film from like 2006, 2007. And then he was like, I want to remake this, but with real actors now. And he was like, I want to go after Bruce Willis, Jack Black. And I'd given Jack Black some of his movies when we were shooting Nacho. He had always been a huge fan. And so the documentary is Steve remaking his Elf movie, and Jack agrees to be in it. And so, I mean, I'm giving away a big part of the movie, but the hardest part of that one, I think, because Steve is such a complex character, is managing the edit where it did feel like it was being mean-spirited toward him, but celebrating his work. And that was a fine line to walk, because it was tough, because you're laughing at how ridiculous some of his ideas are. And to me, it was the edit of managing the celebration versus coming off. Because the moment that an audience would watch this and feel like you were making fun of him or mocking him, it would be the worst thing because we all had affection for Steve. Like, he's made more movies than I'll ever make. And anyway, so it was tough. That we just had to kind of find that in the edit.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then other question. What's one mistake most filmmakers make regardless of their experience?
Getting lazy. I think like it's such hard work making a film. It's easy to settle for something that's not as good as it can be. And I don't think there's a single filmmaker that at some point during production doesn't get lazy about like, I mean, it's such a grind. You're working long hours. I think it's easy to settle for, I don't need to get that extra shot. I'm tired, or, you know. So I guess being easier place
Okay, cool.
is a
And then
dangerous game.
last question for my family. Can I take a picture with you?
Do it.
Okay, sweet. Sounds good.
I can only hold this
I'll be
pose.
so proud of you. Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks.
Have a great night.
You too.
Got one more, Jared. How you holding up?
Oh, great. No, keep going. I can go for as long as you guys want.
Hi, my name is Noah,
What's up, Noah?
man with a beard. So sorry about
Yeah.
that. I like yours though.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the question that I had is, as someone who went to film school, looking back on your experience, what is something that you wish you could have done? Like starting from the beginning, like, oh crap, I was in film school. Why didn't I do that then?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I wish I would have made more look, I wish I would have studied screenwriting more at film school. I think for me, that is like, if you want to be a director, I mean, there are a lot of great directors out there that have, that are incredible craftsmen that can do incredible work, and whether you're a commercial director or television director or film director, but I think the ones, I don't know, I think to become a real filmmaker, you have to understand story and character, and that starts first, like on the page, you know what I mean? The one thing that I did love about film school is trying out so many different positions, volunteering to be on other people's shoots. There's nothing, it's such low stakes. This is your chance to experiment and totally fail. And to try, like, I thought I wanted to be a cinematographer, and I shot a number of student films for people. And I'd be like, dude, I just read this American cinematographer about how Steve Soderbergh, didn't use any like movie lights. He just showed up. And I did that. I freaking ruined so many student films. Such a ding dong. But then after a while, after doing that, I was like, you know what? I like cinematography. I like being a DP sort of, but I don't like kind of serving somebody else's idea that I'm not super into. And I was like, I got stories that I want to tell. And so I just started getting a camera and going off and making my own short films. Even ones that were not assignments. Like, it was like, I feel like the people in film school that were doing stuff beyond just what was asked of them, as far as assignments go, that were like, I'm going to make a movie and it's not an assignment. Peluca was that. Like, I didn't even have an assignment, and I just went off and shot this film and brought it back, and it ended up getting into festivals, and that was all great. But the people that did that at film school are still working in the business. The ones that didn't, that did the bare minimum just to get a grade, they're not doing film at all. But the ones that had a passion for it and continue to experiment and be willing to fail are the ones that are working today. So.
Okay. Follow up to that is then afterwards, after college, once you have the degree, like you said, at that point, what first steps did you take?
Yeah. What was funny for me, I was at film school at BYU and met my wife there, and we were making short films, and then it was like I knew that I had to write a movie. So we actually wrote Napoleon while I was in film school still. And even though I wasn't qualified to take the upper level feature screenwriting classes, I was like buying my own screenwriting books and reading everything I could about structure and character and plot and blah, 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 and still didn't know everything. And was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for someone to give me permission to do something. I'm just going to do it. So we wrote it when we were like sophomores in the film program. And then we're like, let's just go shoot this friggin' thing. And so I didn't graduate from film school. My wife did later, but I didn't. I mean, it was something that we wrote there. I think getting a film degree and getting experience and having this community of people, now's a good chance to try and like get something going. Well, you've got people that are around you that you can collaborate with that'll work for like nothing. It's a good time to kind of figure it out. But I think after film school, it's take any opportunity that you can get to work on a film. I think some people feel like they're the people that feel overqualified to work as a PA or to work as an intern, man, you got to take those opportunities, because I'll tell you what, like just putting yourself and being on top of mind for somebody that could hire you again and being in front of them, like they're going to hire the person that they like that's busting their butt for nothing. And so many opportunities are going to come from that. So I would say, like, don't turn down things that you think you're too big for. Like be humble about it and dive in and get experience. Because I was fortunate when I was in high school to start interning with this filmmaker T.C. Christensen, and he's a Utah filmmaker. Does a lot of like LDS films, but also when I knew him in like the 90s and early 2000s, was doing a lot of IMAX movies. So every summer when I was in high school, I'd go work with him and intern with him. And he kind of became my mentor. He was super nice, and I was a terrible camera assistant. But all that experience on set gave me the confidence earlier in my film school career to be like, I kind of know production a little bit. I'm going to go make a movie. So anyway, I think, but there's so many ways you can go about it. But I think just continue to be ambitious. It's tough. You're going to face not too many opportunities. You're going to have to be aggressive and find those opportunities and put yourself out there. And I think some people get discouraged pretty early on because they don't have any contacts, don't, know anybody in the biz, but keep like putting yourself out there and then take the opportunities when they come.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Jared, you opened the door and 3 more people lined up. So we're going to do this.
I love it. Let's do it.
That guy stole my joke about being a guy with a beard. First off, wanted to say that the couple episodes of Last Man on Earth that you did, favorite episodes, like that's just some peak Forte. But I've noticed that a lot of your films, like Napoleon Dynamite, Masterminds, this, even though it's a lot of desert shots, have some pretty vibrant colors, like blues and reds and stuff that really pop. And I was just wondering how early into production that kind of thing, or how early into pre-production, like, are you thinking about that? Is
that's a great question. For me, it's funny with starting with Napoleon, like we that was my high school that I went to high school in. And so I knew that it had these like Technicolor lockers that were super rainbowy. And I loved the idea of keeping it in kind of these primary colors that popped. It's such a beautiful time of year that we shot in Idaho. There's blue sky and like the fields are really kind of like, golden. And my wife Jerusha, she was the costume designer in the film too, and she hit up every freaking Desert Industries between St. George and Idaho Falls, putting together Napoleon's like outfit, like finding the best t-shirts. So we were really picky and hands-on with everything, and both of us picking it together. Moon boots she borrowed from her uncle. So like we knew the look, but we had already kind of established the look in the short film for that. So we knew that, like, okay, and it was her idea. She's like, we got to perm John Heater's hair because he had long, kind of like, he looked like a groovy dude. And she's like, we got to perm it and then like part it right here. That was like totally her idea, and it changed the character. He became his own thing. So all of that, those decisions were made. me knowing what the locations were and what colors would look good there, right? Like what colors would pop and look nice against the backdrop. And it was the backdrop that I knew because I grew up there, so that was all great. Mastermind, same thing. It was like, okay, you know, we're in the South. And I had a good costume designer, and I my iPad is just full of references of clothes and weird outfits that I just keep when I see it. If I'm doing a commercial and have to put together like a lookbook or a treatment, so I've got references of stuff, and it's so much. The more clear of a communicator you are early on in pre-production, and the more clear idea you have of what you want, the better it is. But then you want to give the artists that are working with you, whether it's the cinematographer or costume designer or production designer, you want them to be able to like do their kick butt work for you too. But if they're going in blind and have no idea what you like, that's a bad thing. That's on you as a director. But if you can show them, I love this, here are some references, now go do your thing, then it's amazing. And if you've hired good people, then they try and outdo what you brought to them, and then it's awesome. So, but yeah, very hands-on, as much decision making, and usually you'll do a wardrobe fitting, and you'll try, like I still have on my phone, I'm just going to show you guys right now for fun. I have like the wardrobe fitting for Masterminds with like Owen Wilson and Kristen Wiig and Zach. I'm just going to show you on my phone right now. But we tried a bunch of stuff, and it was like, oh, this doesn't work. So there are some looks that were just disastrous for the camera test that we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. But it's just kind of playing around. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, that worked for me.
Another one? I thought you had another question, maybe.
I didn't. No, I didn't. I was gonna try and think of one, but I can't.
Okay, wait. Okay, I've got these hideous photos from Masterminds of the yeah, like here's like a hair test of Zach, and then this one here later, and like in the uniform, and then here's like he's such an idiot. Okay, so
that's perfect. Next question was, how should I cut my hair next? And I think
that's it. But these are like outfits that we tried and like different looks for like the camera test. Yeah, but you know, you start to go like, oh, I like these pink colors for this person, or like, you know, like here's Owen in this like outfit. Like, yeah, let's put him in some tight cowboy jeans and give him a turtleneck. I mean, you just experiment. And this was like a look that we totally did not do, giving him like a ponytail. The studio was like, what kind of movie are we making here, Hess? This is weird. It is. But anyway, yeah, but it's like you just fool around and see what works.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Hey, I'll stand back. I'm tall. So on some of your films, you're credited as a producer and director. And I was wondering, since those are such like large roles on a film, obviously, how do you handle wearing both those hats while getting the job of both those done, like to the vision and what you would need them for?
Yeah. I think it's funny, like on an independent film, if you're the director of an independent film, you are doing so much producing and super involved. And especially for Don Verdean, it was like, I had the locations all picked out even before my production designer showed up to work on it. And the production designer uses this guy, Richard Wright. He did Gentleman Broncos for me. Good friend. He does a ton of movies with David Gordon Green, who did like the new Halloween movie. He's made just some incredible independent films. Good friend. But he also was the production designer in Righteous Gemstones, but it's being a producer it's like, first of all, it's one of the most misunderstood titles in all of showbiz because it means so many different things in different contexts, right? It's a credit that gets thrown around to people that have done nothing. And then the people that work the hardest. It's almost like you have a line producer, they're like a construction manager. You know what I mean? Where they're like project manager, like in charge of the budget, the logistics, the scheduling. And then you have creative producers like Jerry Bruckheimer that are big, Hollywood moguls that put together the project. I'm going to get the actor attached, the director, get the script. And then you've got people that are friends of the real producers that like get a credit and you're like, who is this person? I don't know who they are. It's weird, but producing just means you're doing whatever it takes to make your movie, essentially. And so yeah, it's if you're directing something, you're always producing something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of one of the same. It's just a dumb credit that like your agent wants to be able to go, and I thought to get you producer credit too. And it doesn't really, I don't know. To me, it doesn't mean anything.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Last one.
Okay, I'm a little bit short.
You're all right. This is adjustable.
Okay, cool. My name is Kim, and my question is a little more like simple, I guess, and you kind of answered pieces of it throughout the other questions.
Cool.
But did you always know that you wanted to be a filmmaker? And like, I know that you talked about like doing internships in high school during the summers. Was there anything before that that like made you want to do film?
Yeah, two things that happened. One, I was probably 11 or 12, and my friend in the neighborhood brought over his family's home video camera and was like, hey, me and my brother just made a movie. Want to see it? And I was like, what? Like, I had no idea that people could make movies. I didn't even understand the concept. And so he showed me this stupid movie that he'd made. And then I was like, man, can we make one? And then it just ended up being stupid kung fu stuff on a trampoline in my backyard. But I was hooked. It was like, this is so fun. And we did stuff like somebody walk over and go, and then we hit pause on the camera, move the object, and it would make it look like it disappeared. That blew my mind. I was like, holy cow. And then I was in a theater class in middle school, and my theater teacher, I was living in Kansas at the time, and she showed us the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Steven Spielberg movie. And it was like a whole behind the scenes thing, and that blew my mind. I was like, holy crap, this looks so fun. This is what I want to do. And so from then on, it was like I just started making videos, short films all through middle school and high school, and knew that that's what I wanted to do. So, I mean, it started off as a hobby and just seemed like a magical thing. And during that journey, at one point, I thought I wanted to be a visual effects supervisor. I love special effects, but then realized that I had a more natural instinct to be funny. So yeah.
Cool. And in addition to that question, just kind of a follow-up with screenwriting, you were talking about like how you didn't really know about screenwriting and you read as much as you could. Before that, did you have like experience in the writing field at all? I was a creative writing major before switching over to film.
That's great.
I originally wanted to be a screenwriter, but then I thought maybe the screenwriter's vision doesn't always come across. And I feel like the director's is really where you kind of are able to kind of encapsulate everyone else's vision and the director itself.
Right. Yeah, no, I did not have, I loved creative writing in high school. In all my English classes, I did not take any creative writing in college other than screenwriting classes. And I wish that I had, though, because I think, anytime I read a novel now, or I get so inspired by all mediums of art when it comes to filmmaking that to me, the writing and storytelling and character are like the most important things. If you don't have that, you don't have a good movie. Like there's never been a good movie that was made that didn't start well on the page. I just don't think. I mean, look, I think there's some documentaries. That's a totally different thing. But as far as narrative fiction goes, the concept, the characters, the story were all started out good, you know. And I mean, you've seen so many bad Hollywood, and I've heard this from executives and agents all the time, like, yeah, look, the script's not great, but you know, if you put Vince Vaughn and Will Ferrell, it's gonna be great, right? And those movies get made, and they're not. Yeah, they've got charming moments because you love those people or the characters, but at the end of the day, you're like, waste of time, you know. So there's got to be, the thing has to be good on the page. So I think I can't even remember what your question was now.
No, it's fine. I feel like that definitely answered a lot of what I was like wondering myself. But
Yeah.
all right, well, thank you.
Yeah, keep it up. Make a movie.
Jared, you know, you've seen Living in Oblivion, Tom DiCillo?
Yeah. Not in a while.
Yeah, well, we had Tom DiCillo here doing the same thing, CineSkype, a while back, and he held the record for the longest CineSkype until tonight. My friend just blew him out of the water by 7 minutes.
Oh, sweet. I love it.
So thank you so much. That was super great. Hope to see you soon. And thanks for staying up late.
Heck
and give UVU, give Jerusha UVU some love from UVU.
I will.
And we'll see you soon.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
A big round of applause,
Good
everybody.
luck. Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.
You too.